Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elfie and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of the books that have been on my TBR for the longest. Some of these books have literally been on my TBR since I first started BookTube like 7 years ago, so they've been on my TBR for a very long time and I still haven't got to them. Some of these books I've even unhauled and then repurchased copies. So these books have been around for a while and hopefully making this video will encourage me to finally pick them up. So the first book is one that was super popular when it first came out, and honestly I still see people occasionally talk about this one. It's definitely not the most hyped book on this list, but a lot of people love it and a lot of people still talk about it, and that is Vicious by V. Schwab. I have read some other books by V. Schwab. I've read her middle grade paranormal trilogy. I've also read This Savage Song, but I have not read Vicious. And so many people love this book. So many people are obsessed with it, and the concept of it, I think I'll really enjoy it. Like, it's academic rivals. There's these enemies. At least one of them is like a villain. I don't know if they're both the bad guys, but it just, the general premise, what little I know of it, sounds like something I would really enjoy, so I don't know why I haven't picked it up already. Like, I think when I finally pick this up, I will really enjoy it, so I don't really have an excuse as to why I haven't picked it up. I just haven't, and yeah, I think it's you know, the time is here. I should finally pick this book up, and I think I'll really enjoy it. So while we're at it, I haven't read A Darker Shade of Magic either, and again, I really don't have an excuse as to why I've not read it. It's not that I'm not interested in it, clearly I am because I own it. I just, for whatever reason, have never picked this up, and I know the font in this is quite tiny, so maybe that's why I've been put off physically picking these up in the past, because the font is so small, which my dyslexia, I do tend to avoid books with small font. So the reason I've not picked these two up already might be as simple as that, but I think I should finally read these at some point soon. So next we have The Diviners by Liver Bray. I have tried to pick this up a couple of times and just haven't gotten into it from like the first chapter. But I own a physical copy and I own the audiobook through Audible from like 5 years ago, so I really don't have an excuse for not reading this. I mean, it is quite long, so maybe that's what's been putting me off, but I think this is another one that it sounds like something I would really enjoy. Our main character can sense the history of objects by touching them. It's set in the 1920s. I think maybe the thing that put me off the first time was the language in terms of sort of setting the scene of the 1920s. I think I found that a little bit off-putting, but I think once I'm into it, I will really enjoy this story. It has the word occult in the blurb, so it sounds like something I would enjoy. And yeah, I feel like, again, I just need to actually start it and get further than the first chapter, and then I think I will be fine. I think it's just getting into it that I'm struggling with. But I do have the audiobook, so maybe I should finally just listen to that and hopefully get through The Diviners finally after like 10 years. It's not that long. It's been maybe like 7 years. This has been on my TBR, so still a ridiculous amount of time. Then we have another book that I have actually attempted to read a couple of times, and that's To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This is a book that has sirens in it, and honestly, again, it's something that, from the, you know, general idea I have of it, you'd think I'd really enjoy it, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't get into it. But it is a really short read, so maybe I should eventually pick this up soon, because I've been reading a lot of long books recently and I've wanted to pick up some shorter books in between. So maybe I will put this on my TBR for in between the long books that I'm reading, because it should be a very quick read. This is another one that's been on my TBR since pretty much when I joined BookTube originally, like 7 years ago. So it's been on the list for a long time, and it is very much time that I finally picked it up and read it. Then we have a couple of classics, and I have again attempted to read these in the past and just not followed through with it. And the first one is Frankenstein, which for some reason this edition is absolutely battered. I have no idea what the hell happened to that, but I tried to read this most recently last year when I started my MA, and I did get a fair way through this, and it's not that I wasn't enjoying it, I just, my attention span was just not there at the time, but I was really enjoying it from what, you know, how much I had read. So I think this is another one that I might try and pick up this year at some point because it's a very short read and I was enjoying it from the little amount that I had read. So yes, this is another classic that I do think I need to pick up at some point soon. Okay, another classic that I think people are quite shocked I've not read is Dracula. I own multiple copies of Dracula and I've not actually read it. This is not my original copy. I got this last year when I was working at Waterstones and I really like this edition. It is illustrated, which I think is pretty cool. I've never actually read Dracula the whole way through. I just think, you know, it is very long, especially this edition is like nearly 600 pages long. So I think definitely that is the reason I've not picked this one up. But I feel like when I actually do read it, I will really enjoy it. And yeah, I think I find it intimidating because it's so long, but I eventually will pick this up and I'm sure I will enjoy it at least a little bit, and it's a classic. It's Dracula. I need to pick this up eventually. But I have actually owned a copy of Dracula since I was a child, and I tried to read it as a child, so I feel like maybe that kind of put me off for a while. The language was just not what I was able to read as a child. I'm dyslexic and my dyslexia was undiagnosed for a very long time, so I really struggled with reading when I was a kid, and I feel like trying to read Dracula was not the best idea, but now that I know how to manage my dyslexia, I probably could handle it, so maybe I should finally get around to reading this after all those years. So then I have a fantasy, which is one of the first books I bought when I first joined BookTube, and I've had this on my TBR ever since, and I've still not read it, and that's Walk on Earth a Stranger by Ray Carson. I actually was somehow ended up rewatching one of Reagan's really old vlogs where she was reading this, and it reminded me that I still owned it and that I've still not read it. But honestly, I think this sounds like such a cool concept and such an interesting fantasy world, so I can't really explain to you why I haven't picked this one up, but I did try to read it when I first got it and just wasn't in the mood for it, so I then put it down and haven't picked it up since. But I think it's going to be really cool. Our main character can literally sense gold. It's like a ability that she has, and I'm guessing that people are going to be trying to exploit that and use that for their gain. So it's a very interesting gift to have, you know, magical ability to have. So I think it could be a really interesting concept, and I just have never really got into it, which is weird, but yeah, I really would like to try and read this soon. Just because a bit of a personal achievement. I think this is probably the book that has been on my TBR the longest out of all of these books and out of any book that I own. So yeah, I would like to eventually read this, even if it's just so that I can say that I've read it. Okay, so then we have a book that I owned ages ago and that I unhauled it at some point. I don't know when, but I unhauled it and I had to get a new copy. And that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I did try to read this years ago and did not get on with it. I did not gel with the writing style and it just wasn't for me. But so many people love this book, and I just feel like there's a lot of books that I tried to read around that time and DNF'd and that I have read recently and really enjoyed. My reading tastes have changed massively, so I feel like I could definitely try to read this one again, and I'm much more likely to enjoy it this time round. So I would like to finally pick up The Night Circus and see what all of the fuss is about. So then I have Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee. This is an ARC. I didn't get sent the ARC. I swapped it with somebody for something on Facebook like years ago, and I still haven't picked it up. Honestly, again, I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why I haven't picked this up because it does sound really cool. It sounds dark and spooky and magical, and that's usually what I want from a fantasy book. So yeah, I don't know why I haven't picked this one up yet, but I feel like it could be the time. Maybe this October when it's spooky season, I can pick this one up and see if I like it, because it's been on my TBR for so long and I'm intrigued now to see if I do in fact like this one. Okay, so then I have another one that was so popular when it first came out, and it's still one that I see a lot of people talk about, a lot less, but people still talk about this, and it's Children of Blood and Bone by Temi Adeyemi. I know the second book did not get as positive reviews as the first one. I still want to give this one a go. So many people talk about this book and it kind of feels ridiculous at this point that I haven't read it, and people talk about it so much. When people talk about really hyped books from, you know, a couple of years ago, this book is almost always on their lists, and I just think, you know, I've had it this entire time. Again, one of the books I bought when I first joined BookTube like 7 years ago, and I still haven't actually read it, so I probably should get to reading it soon. Okay, and then we have the book that I am most embarrassed to admit that I have not yet read, and that's Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I own a signed first edition, and I've not read this book. I found this copy in a charity shop for like £1.50, and I picked it up back when I didn't really know a lot about books that are rare, that are really sought after, I guess. And I've had so many people message me wanting to buy this book from me. And honestly, if you don't know, Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor is one of my favourite books of all time. I love that book so much. And so many people tell me that I'm gonna absolutely love Strange the Dreamer. Like, it's so many people's favourite books, or at least so many people love it, and I'm kind of intimidated now, and I'm scared that I won't love it. And again, I own the hardback, I own a paperback, and I own the audiobook. And the only reason I haven't picked this up yet is just because I'm so nervous that I won't enjoy it, and that everybody loves it, everyone's expecting me to love it, and what if I don't? So yes, this is very much at the top of my TBR list in terms of books that have been there for ages. In terms of the books that I'm talking about in this video, I really need to read this soon, and I do aim to. It's on my TBR for this year, and I think I'm gonna really love it when I do read it. I'm just intimidated, I guess. Okay, so those are all of the books I'm going to talk about today. Those are some of the books that have been on my TBR for the longest period of time, and I really feel like hopefully this video will encourage me to pick up at least some of them this year and finally tick them off of my TBR list, because it's kind of insane how long these books have been on my physical TBR and I've not yet read them. Let me know in the comments if you guys recommend any of these books, which ones you think I should read first, or if you'd like to see a reading blog where I finally get to these books. And let me know which books have been on your TBR for the longest. I'd really like to know that it's not just me that holds on to books for this long without reading them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see future videos from me, and you'll see me in the next one. Bye guys.